into the dailies, and I'd like to welcome to studio, you'll see them in a moment, James Mamboleo and Elvis Abenga, advocates who are here to help us make sense of the intrigues surrounding the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. I did tell you at the start that that report would inform our conversation, but first, what is on the front page of the Daily Nation? Here we see delayed windfall, 5,000 ICAS jobs. Here we have former Senator Cleophas Malala, former MP Margaret Wanjiru, former Governor Mike Sonko, former Governor Okoth Obado, former MP Chris Wamalwa, former Senator Millicent Omanga, former MP Purity Wangui Ngirishi, and former Sports CS, that is Rashid Chesa. Here it reads, long wait. Hundreds of President William Ruto's supporters are awaiting the shortlist from the Public Service Commission with bated breath because the position of Chief Administrative Secretary offers them the biggest chance to serve in government. The head of state is staring at yet another appointment crisis. I'll ask my panelists this morning to weigh in on this as well. But also looking at the front page, test of a lifetime for primary pupils. I see here Sophia Wamboi, who who is sitting her KCP exam at Madaraka Primary School in Nairobi. This picture taken of her yesterday when the national exams kicked off. I see here on the ticker, show of class as Ghana, Cameroon shine in Qatar. I did mention James Mamboleo, Elvis Abenga, Karibuni Sana. What do you make of this front headline on the front page of the Daily Nation? There was a court ruling in regard to the CAS position. Perhaps you could provide some insight, Elvis?
Yes, thank you, Olive. What we are saying is that regardless of the provisions of what the court stated about the unconstitutionality of the CAS, at least as it was constituted in the previous organization, the current administration is trying to have the same office, do the same functions, only as constituted differently. And from what we are seeing in the dailies today, we are having, just when it says delayed windfall 5,000 ICAS jobs, just shows the state of the Kenyan political scene, in the sense that we have all these people who are not necessarily out for service, but more of getting back and getting the windfall and getting the benefits of the opportunity to work as CASs. The court, when dealing with the issue of constitutionality of the office of the CAS, wondered about the difference between the functions of this office with that of the PS. And that has not yet been addressed in the current setup, so we are just waiting to see. Maybe there might be a second challenge again in court based on the current appointments that we are seeing.
All right. James, what do you make of this development?
For me, a complete distortion of the priorities of this country. I look at the faces gracing the Daily Nation, and from left to the right, I see folks who have served in various capacities as members of parliament, as governors, who want to take a job by all means. Interesting that in a country where young people are suffering for lack of jobs, we have the highest level of unemployment in the region, we still think it's important to work very hard to create the office of Chief Administrative Secretary for political losers and rejects and so on and so forth. I think this country has better priorities, and the priority for this administration, in my view, should be to try and spur economic growth, which is going to be the hope for young people to get jobs. I don't, of course, have to weigh in on the question that the courts have already declared this position unconstitutional, and I wouldn't want to imagine that there is any good reason for this administration to insist that they have to create a position that the courts have declared unconstitutional. Let them move on. I mean, they have a lot on their plate. I do not think that these folks have any specific solutions to provide to the challenges this nation is facing. I mean, let them come out here and practice business or any other thing that other people do who are not employed in government. So this idea that people who have lost political jobs have to get some other job, and so on and so forth, is something that this country has to do away with, and it will do us a lot of good if they can start with rejecting these people and telling them go home. But the other contradiction in terms is 5,000 people looking for just a few jobs. It's crazy. It tells you that there is a real crisis in terms of employment opportunities in this country. And if I were this administration, the first thing I would embark on is sit down and create the legal, administrative, and policy framework to take this country from the current the current employment doldrums it is in, to take it to the next level, because I think that's what they promised.
All right.
I don't see any hustler here, and I wouldn't call any of these hustlers. This is an administration for hustlers. They should maintain their focus on the ball. They came in on the basis of improving the situation for hustlers. They should do it.
All right. Let's take a look at what else is gracing the front pages of the dailies this morning. We have Taifa Leo. We have GMO, koti yampiga Ruto breki, mpango wa kuleta mahindi nchini. Wasimama Linturi apuuzilia mbali vitisho vya Kuria kwa wakulima. Mudavadi akosoa Kuria kwa kuingilia majukumu ya Linturi. This is the same headline on the front page of the Standard. There we have it. Court stops GMOs as Linturi disowns. Kuria maize saga deepens after High Court suspends importation as Agriculture CS claims he does not know anything about decision to ship in grain. This on page 6 of the Standard. So this informs this is the same headline that is on the Taifa Leo, the question of GMOs. Gentlemen, in your view, is the trade CS, are the trade CS and the agriculture CS speaking at cross purposes? Did you expect it to be Moses Kuria, the Trade Cabinet Secretary, leading the charge on this GMOs, or did you expect it to be the agriculture CS, Mithika Linturi? Elvis?
I expected there to be a coordinated approach from both these ministries, because the importation, anything to do with import, that falls under trade. But clearly that importation affects the agricultural sector. And you've seen there's been a lot of complaints from the agricultural sector, you know, some farmers. And now when we are going to look at court, the court has issued an interim injunction stopping the importation based on a few grounds. One, the issue of health, a higher sustainable standard of health, because the petitioners told the court that if these GMOs get into Kenya, the health of the major population will be affected, as well as the concerns of the wider farmers. So because the court could not determine it urgently without getting into full hearing, the court decided to opt to just stop the importation and deal with everything else after that. But in terms of the approach of the government, we are expecting to have a government that has a coordinated approach with everyone speaking from the same voice. But now what we are seeing is we have different dissents, and they're not having a coordinated approach, in short, towards this. Yeah.
And the reason I asked that is this was shared in one of my WhatsApp groups, and this is in reference to a story, CS Juma lifts ban on disco matanga imposed by Matiang'i in 2019, and there was a comment under that by Sankei Saitoti, and he's quoted as saying there is something wrong with this KK government. A ban imposed by the Ministry of Interior being lifted by Public Service Minister, Trade CS talking of maize, while the CS Agriculture is silent. Sports Minister commissioning exams while Kenya Sevens are doing a fundraiser. He says clowns all over. What are your thoughts, James?
There is definitely general malaise in the way this administration is focusing on various critical issues. And I think there is a carryover of the campaign mentality into the administration. I expect that some of these guys should shed off that rough manner of doing things that probably would have been most appropriate in our campaign, and get a bit finer in terms, get a bit finer and a bit neater in the way they handle public affairs. Remember that ministers of state, the cabinet secretaries that we have, are supposed to be the policy champions of government, and anything they say means something for the Kenyan people and the world at large. So they cannot be reckless in some of the things or in some of the statements they make with respect to very important things. They are aware, I have no doubt, that the GMO issue is a very stormy debate currently across the country, and as the people who are charged with the responsibility of carrying the mouthpiece for policy for this government, they should know that anything they say is taken very seriously by the people. So, as my colleague has said, it's extremely important for them to be speaking from at least one mouth. They can't be each of them stating their own things while countermanding and contradicting each other from at least a position of former cabinet. So what I think is Moses Kuria is a brilliant man. I know him personally, I have to admit. But I think he's letting his mouth a bit too loose on very important matters. I've seen him recently speak about Mitumba. I've seen him talk about all manner of things. I think that, in my view, is not spurring the growth of trade and so on and so forth. These people need to go down and sit in some corner and think seriously about the issues affecting this country. And when they stand to speak, they need to be speaking from a position of information. I do not see how, even if you are the Minister for Trade, I do not see how you speak about a major issue like the importation of maize without consulting your counterpart in agriculture, your counterpart in many other things, and so on and so forth, because this is supposed to be a big issue. So, yes, there is a problem that seems to be associated with GMO, maize, and so on and so forth. We do not know exactly what the factual position with respect to this problem is. We would expect that the light should be coming from government. Or what we're getting from government is, I think, a lot of noise and no light.
A lot of noise. Now, I'd like to segue us closer to a topic of conversation this morning. But before then, minor hitches reported as primary school exams kick off. I can see here a grade 6 candidate at the Wasingishu Primary School in Eldoret. And this is which school? Let me see. These are learners at Madaraka Primary School in Nairobi before they start their KCPE and KPSEA exams. And speaking of the minor hitches, what were they? I can see here that in Narok County, officials had ambulances, not a hitch, but just an interesting thing to note. Ambulances on standby as 140 KCPE candidates are reported to be pregnant. In total, 741 girls in various levels in primary and secondary school in the county have been, is it in the county or in the country? Can't really make it out. Let me open that page. 741 girls in various levels in primary and secondary schools in the county have been confirmed pregnant. Some 19 girls in Bomet County were reported to be sitting the examinations while pregnant, with one of them being in grade 6. So that is the situation. That was the situation in Narok County. I can see here at the same time head teachers from 15 schools in Bungoma County failed to collect the examination material. Some of the affected schools have been closed down for failing to comply with Ministry of Education guidelines. And in Wasingishu, 52 schools failed to take up KPSEA material. That has to do with the exams, a question that is on many a parent's mind. President to announce where JSS will be domiciled. Current grade 6 learners expected to join junior high next year. This report by Winnie Atieno, Education Reform Team report to guide that decision. And now on to the topic of conversation this morning, the intrigues surrounding the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. And I can see here demonstrations are not the way to keep us in check, Ruto tells Raila. This report by Simon Shuri And Justus Ochieng, Azimio members of parliament are set to meet today to discuss planned rallies and other matters. Azimio leader has called for rallies in support of 4 IEBC commissioners who are facing removal. We need to take a break in 3 minutes. But Elvis, quickly, what do you make of these remarks by the president?
Well, in democracies where we have freedom of assembly, freedom of expression, most places where the populace want to express dissatisfaction with government action, demonstrations and peaceful assemblies are usually the way to go in order to catch the government attention on that. So there is no problem, democratically speaking, for there to be peaceful assemblies in order to kickstart the conversation with regards to this. I think I'll say much more, but for now I'd say that it is the rights of the citizens to demonstrate, to assemble peacefully, to express their opinions on what the government is doing, and hopefully influence policy and decisions of the government.
All right, I saw a statement that our children are sitting for exams, James, and there could be a better time to hold these demonstrations.
First and foremost, let me also join many other Kenyans in wishing the KCPE candidates and the candidates sitting, I don't know what these exams
KPSEA.
KPS, yeah,
yes.
Whatever it is. I want to wish them well as they sit their exams. I hope that our leaders are doing a better job at giving hope for these candidates as they go to sit these exams. But on the question of rallies or no rallies, demonstrations or no demonstrations, of course, if you walk across some of the biggest capitals of the world, you go to New York, go to Washington, go to London, you will find at least 2-3 camps of demonstrators, and in those countries they are always permanent, demonstrating against something every once in a while. The question is this the best time to have this debate? Because you cannot create a problem and then tell other people that this problem I have created can only be solved in this way. First and foremost, I don't know whether it is even a good thing that we are discussing the removal of IEBC commissioners at this particular stage. So that is where the question should begin. Because for me it would look like an obvious witch hunt. And so where you have a government that has weakened the opposition. Most of the gentlemen and ladies you see in the opposition are wearing opposition badges, but they are actually in support of government. What opportunity do you have, for instance, in the formal process of checking government, as it were? So in some cases, if the government itself creates desperation in the opposition, then they cannot be hard telling the opposition that, you know, you cannot resort to this and that other method of checking us, because that's probably the only method left, because I do not see that Parliament, as it is right now, would give any serious opposition against this KK government.
All right, on that note, let's take a break. We hear more on the subject on the other side. Do remember you can tweet me at @oburrows and at NTV Kenya. Gentlemen, your Twitter handles? Elvis?
Abenga.
Yes. How about you, James?
At James Mamboleo.
At James Mamboleo, at Abenga. See you on the other side of this break.
The county government of Kilifi will mark the Environment and Land Court Conference 10th anniversary from 28th to 2nd December 2022 at Pwani University in Kilifi County. The theme of the event is Looking Back and Moving Forward on Environment and Justice in Kenya. His Excellency William Ruto is expected to officially open the event. Kilifi County Governor Gideon Mongaro welcomes all members of public and stakeholders to actively participate to help curb land issues in the country. You can watch this event and more live on NTV, Tuesday 29th November from 10 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. To register for this event, visit www.judiciary.go.ke.
This week on The Best Of, we look at what it takes to keep avocados constant.
You only learn you have the wrong seedling after 3 years. Then you say, oops, wrong fruit.
Organic farming is the present and the future.
Once they test your fruit and find it has a certain high percentage of chemicals, then you lose the market.
And we get a proper agroeconomic education.
The difference between me and you, who has bought on the roadside, I am 1 year ahead.
Money grows on trees.
As little as they are, they fetch a lot of money.
On The Best of Avocado Farms.
Crystal Rivers Residences, the future of fine living.
Now this is what we call convergence. Come through for the morning fix this and every single Friday right here on NTV. Yes, it's about that time.
You know, the coolest thing about mornings is that a girl and two guys together in the mix, you never know what to expect. You guys are crazy.
From Friday 6, bring your good vibes, bring your picks. From 7 a.m., it's a dope mix. Every single thing on Friday changes with the morning fix.
On my dark marks, I've tried everything from A to Z, even vitamin C, but hardly any results. Nivea Lumina 630 works from day one, with visible results in just 2 weeks and 71% dark marks reduction in 12. Join the 1 million women already using the #1 Lumina 630 from Nivea.
We know your flavor, and that's how you inspire us to always deliver the best quality meals made fresh with locally sourced ingredients. Galitos, bold African flavor.
Get the Galitos Hot Box and a 500 ml Coke soda at just 699 Kenya shillings.
All right, welcome back to AM Live. This morning, we're looking at the intrigues around the IEBC. Is it, as Raila Odinga puts it, democracy on trial? Is it the Cherera 4 who are on trial? And the process before the Justice, Legal and Affairs Committee of the National Assembly, that is the hearings that they have been holding. Is it due process or is it a farce with an already predetermined outcome? That's the argument that one Juliana Cherera makes through her advocate Apollo Mboya. I've just flipped through the Daily Nation. This is page 6. Masit declines invite, moves to court. Summon president over tweet, Cherera tells House team. I didn't see the bit about summoning, but I did see the bit in the communication to the National Assembly that the president referred to these 4 as rogue, and therefore Cherera's advocate argues that the outcome appears predetermined, goes against what is it you call it, the natural rules of, is it natural rules of natural justice? What do you make of this development? There
is definitely serious concerns about how impartial this process is going to be, considering the president is alleged to have made very strong statements regarding a matter that's already in active determination, both in court as well as in parliament. With the administration being as it is, I would understand why counsel for the four would actually raise the issue of, is it really impartial? Yes, the procedure is anchored in the Constitution. That's what the procedure for removing one of the commissioner of the IEBC through a complaint on gross misconduct. But where we have a parliament that is already suffering from public views of maybe not being too impartial because of the political climate, I would understand the concerns raised.
All right, and I was just pulling up that tweet that was made reference to by Juliana Cherera's advocate, Apollo Mboya. Can you see it? I think, let me zoom in so we have a better view of it. The lords of impunity who destroyed oversight institutions using the handshake fraud should allow Parliament to hold quote-unquote rogue officials who put the nation in danger by subverting the democratic will of the people to be held to account. New order is rule of law, not wishes of big men. What do you make of this, James?
A contradiction in terms yet again, because if you deliberately talk about rule of law and not the wishes of big men, and then in the same process you're also exhibiting what would appear like a predisposition to have whim over process prevail, then that would be an irony of sorts, because it is the same thing you seem to be talking against. In my view, the issue before us is a very important question that all of us should be very concerned about. The election is now over. Those persons charged with the responsibility of conducting the election did what they did. Kenyans of various political persuasions may not necessarily like some of the commissioners, this side or the other, but we should not be seen to be joking around with some of these processes just because we don't like them. I remember one of the biggest questions in this past election, as far as the IEBC is concerned, and this is a question that was put before the Supreme Court, was what it means to tally, verify, and declare results under Article 138, sub-article 3, C, as read together with Article 138, sub-article 3, and sub-article 10. And one of the questions, therefore, was who between the commissioners as their commission and the chairman of the commission should tally and verify presidential results when they are received at the National Tallying Center. And if you closely follow the judgment of the court, you'll find that this is one of the few instances in which the court agreed with the petitioners that it should be the commission as a corporate body and not the chairman that should tally and verify presidential results. And to that extent, therefore, to the extent that the chairman of the IEBC arrogated himself the monopoly of tallying, verifying, and declaring results, to that extent, the four commissioners were right in disowning that result. And so, in my view, there is a legal and political question to this. The legal question is very clear. It has been stated by the Supreme Court. The political question is a bit uncertain because, as I said earlier, this parliament needs to put on some pants. This parliament has no spine, okay? It seems like parliament has been completely taken hostage. And whereas I cannot I cannot determine now what the outcome is going to be. I agree with those who are very serious concern that it doesn't appear that this parliament can give the due process that is necessary in a serious question of this importance so as to be dependable by the entire nation and anyone watching. So it is agreeable at this point that there is a lot of questions for debate on whether this should be happening in the first place or not. And of course, seeing those kind of tweets, we have very good reason to be concerned. But ultimately, I think somebody needs to point out to this parliament that they need to stand up now and deliver this nation from the same things we are talking about there. Lack of rule of law and institutional democracy. You know, in any election, there are people who come out thinking the country has made progress. There are those who come out thinking the country has moved backwards. That's the nature of democracy. And I think this administration needs to get over the hangover of the campaign period and get into the process of governing the country for the good of the whole country. And the president, in my view, should now remember that he's president even for the 4 commissioners who probably did not agree with his result. That is exactly what democracy is about. And if I were the president, I would instruct my lieutenants in the House to not support any process which has the ultimate intention of removing those commissioners from office. And I want to ask this administration to remember that 10 years or 5 years in administration is a very short time. We don't want to get into a precedent in which after every new administration comes into office, we go back to witch hunting the people that we don't like from the previous administration.
All right, Elvis, for you, does this tweet raise red flags?
Yes, it does, and I will address it in different ways. First of all, I'll say, from the Constitution, the role of the president in this process is very clearly outlined. When you look at Article 251 that provides for removal of office, first you have a person who desires the removal, making a petition to Parliament, then the process is done, and if Parliament makes a recommendation, the National Assembly makes a recommendation, it forwards the petition to the President, and now the President, under Article 251, has discretionary powers to suspend the member from office and to appoint a further tribunal to conclusively determine the issue of the removal. So the role of the president is very clearly stated under the Constitution. My concern here is, I do not know whether the president was making the tweet in his official capacity as president or just as another member of another citizen who would, make the similar comments on what is going on in the public. But I would really urge a lot of restraint in this current government, especially from the executive, so that it does not look, as it is looking right now, that it is a government agenda to remove these 4 commissioners. And also, the timing of this process is very important. You take note of the fact that there is already a declared vacancy in the office of the other commissioners. So it, from an independent point of view, it almost looks like an overhaul, an attempt to overhaul the entire IEBC. So just because of the timing, this could as well have happened at a different time once the other issues have been dealt with. But when you put it into consideration that now we are having what looks like a complete overhaul of the IEBC, and then we also now have the president making very serious tweets and comments on constitutional processes, it is undoubted that there would be concerns about the impartiality of this process.
All right. And the timing, and we'll get into that, because the Gazette notice declaring a vacancy in IEBC for three commissioners spoke of an impending vacancy because their term ends in January. And then there's the attempt to amend the IEBC Act with regard to who will constitute the selection panel. But you mentioned Article 251, so I was pulling it up. And this article deals with removal from office and a person desiring, now this is Article 251, Section 2, a person desiring the removal of a member of a commission or of a holder of an independent office on any ground specified in Clause 1. And these grounds are serious violation of the Constitution or any other law, including a contravention of Chapter 6, gross misconduct, whether in the performance of the members or office holders' functions or otherwise, physical or mental incapacity to perform the functions of office, incompetence or bankruptcy. Then, so any person who has who is desiring removal of a member of a commission or holder of an independent office on any of these grounds may present a petition to the National Assembly setting out the alleged facts constituting that ground. The National Assembly shall consider the petition, and if satisfied that it discloses a ground under Clause 1, shall send the petition to the President. On receiving a petition under Clause 3, the President A may suspend the member or office holder pending the outcome of the complaint. B shall appoint a tribunal in accordance with Clause 5. The tribunal shall consist of a person who holds or has held office as a judge of a superior court, who shall be the chairperson, at least 2 persons who are qualified to be appointed as High Court judges, and C, 1 other member who is qualified to assess the facts in respect of the particular ground for removal. The tribunal shall investigate the matter expeditiously, report the facts, and make a binding recommendation to the President, who shall, in accordance with the recommendation act in accordance with the recommendation within 30 days. A person suspended under this article is entitled to continue to receive 1/2 of the remuneration and benefits of the office while suspended. So, James, this article, does it not protect the right to fair hearing of these commissioners who a person may seek to remove, given those who will constitute the tribunal is a person who holds or has held the office of a judge of a superior court, and at least 2 persons who are qualified to be appointed as High Court judges?
That is what it would look like, in my view, except that in this particular scenario, the convergence of coincidence is extremely astounding. You know, each and every player in that process that you have gone through is supposed to be a check upon each other player. For instance, I can give you an example. The President is supposed to be a check against Parliament should Parliament be trying to misbehave. Parliament is supposed to check the President should the President be trying to misbehave, and vice versa. So, if you read the Constitution and follow the history of this republic and understand why independent offices and constitutional commissions were created, then you will arrive at one major rationale, that the reason why these offices were created was so as to safeguard the sovereignty of the people of Kenya, because certain functions that have been assigned to these independent officers and constitutional commissions have been performed previously by holders of office who served purely at the pleasure of the existing administration. And because of that, a big problem arose in which those persons would not therefore be able to safeguard the promise of democracy that certain things be done by independent person or persons who are not the subject of control of whoever person, whether the executive, the judiciary, or the legislature. That is in the Constitution. And so what appears to be Chapter 251 commissions and the procedure for removal from office was created with the idea in mind that should anyone desire the removal of any member of a commission or an independent office, that process should be completely tedious and extremely difficult to achieve so that these offices can run smoothly without anyone having to look behind to see who is looking. Now, what you have in the current situation is something that I think the framers of this constitution did not anticipate. A situation in which Parliament would be very willing to remove an IEBC commissioner, and the president, at least from the tweet we have seen, is already too willing to have these people removed. So you can almost expect that if the present administration has an overwhelming influence on parliamentary process, that small stage of Parliament investigating this question and making a recommendation for purposes of the president establishing a tribunal to investigate the conduct of these commissioners is already gone. That within this particular process, within this current dispensation, that stage is already past, because Parliament would appear is extremely too willing to go in that direction. And then you have on the other side a president already waiting to deal with these people. So I can almost foretell that the president is willing and ready to suspend them when that arrives at his desk. So that's why we should be very concerned about some of these statements that are coming from these officers, okay? And it would then raise a very important question. Are we expecting justice to be done to these people? We don't know exactly what happened. I would also really want to know what happened on that day. But would we expect that the formal framework of removal of a commissioner of the IEBC is going to cut across, not looking left or right, so that we get justice, not just for those 4 commissioners, but for everybody else? Even Kenyans really want to know exactly what happened. So I think some of these statements point to a very dicey situation in as far as the rule of law and institutional democracy is concerned. And I think probably it is reckless, because if you are a judge of the Supreme Court, you cannot already be making adverse comments about a matter that you know is going to arrive at your desk anytime tomorrow, all right? Because it's going to point out to the fact that when you get hold of it, you're not going to be impartial, or you're not going to be an impartial arbiter as you deal with this question. Because it is expected that the president, when he receives, for instance, a recommendation from Parliament for the formation of a tribunal, he's supposed to look at it and ask himself, how did this process come here, all right? And there are a lot of things he can do as president to ensure that justice is done. For instance, by insisting even to his lieutenants in the House that let me not get a recommendation that is only politically convenient. Can you give me a recommendation that can stand the test of the rigors of our justice system, all right? So I think, without really belaboring the point, there is good reason, in my view, for any person conducting objective analysis of this situation to be able to say that in this particular dispensation, it might not be possible for the 4 commissioners to get justice, either in Parliament or before the president when this matter arrives at his desk.
All right. So does the president have a choice in this matter once the recommendation lands on his desk? And I ask that because I see here that the National Assembly shall consider the petition, which implies that they really don't have an option. Yeah. And the petition, just for those who may not be aware, let me pull up the names of the petitioners. The names of the petitioners are the Republican Liberty Party, Reverend Dennis Ndwiga Nthumbi, Mr. Geoffrey Langat, and Mr. Owor Steve Jerry. All right, so those are the petitioners. And now back to the Constitution. It states that the National Assembly shall consider the petition, which my reading is that they don't have a choice in the matter. So there are 4 petitioners. And if it is satisfied that it discloses a ground under Clause 1, so there they do have discretion, shall send the petition to the President. On receiving the petition under Clause 3, the President may suspend the member or office holder pending the outcome of a complaint and shall appoint a tribunal. Are his hands tied, Elvis?
Yes, from the reading of the Constitution, his hands are tied. This process is almost similar to the process of removal of a judge. When you look at how a judge is removed from office, the president must and shall appoint a tribunal. And even after the tribunal has made its decision, when you read Clause 6, it now provides a mandatory, says that the president who shall act in accordance with the recommendation within 30 days. So you could say the president does not have an option once the process has been started. But on the other hand, we need to think of it in a broader spectrum. This is what we call a quasi-judicial process, in the sense that it affects the rights of individuals and to an extent the rights of the public. There is a general principle of law in sub judice that talks about making comments on matters that are ongoing in judicial determination. There is a very good reason behind the existence of such a principle. It is to avoid a situation where there seems to be indirect or direct influence over the process, which is what the concerns that are being had here. And in addition to what we have in the Constitution and what we have in the IEBC Act, we also have the Fair Administrative Action Act that provides for the rights to, what we, in summary, we say justice should not only be done, but it should also be seen to be done. So where we have justice not seen to be done, then that creates a big perception issue, which I think the government should make a point to clarify that this process is impartial because of the existence of the tribunal, which is now almost purely judicial because of the qualifications of the members of the tribunal being judges, so that there is no perception that this is witch hunt, that this is something that is just a retribution by the government currently.
All right. So I was pulling up, as you were speaking, I was pulling up the IEBC Act because something that James called convergence of coincidence. Yeah. So several events preceded these petitions before the National Assembly. And did I cut you short?
No.
Or you had completed?
I completed.
Okay, you completed your point. All right. And this is what preceded these events. President William Ruto gazetted a notice of impending vacancy. So here we have it. This was on the 21st of October 2022. And it says that whereas vacancies will arise in the positions of the chairperson and 2 members of the IEBC on the 17th of January 2023, now therefore in exercise of the powers conferred by Section 7A2 of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission Act, as read with paragraph 1 of the first schedule of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission Act, I, William Samoei Ruto, President of the Republic of Kenya and Commander-in-Chief of the Defense Forces, notify of impending vacancies in the positions of chairperson and 2 members of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission on the 17th of January 2023. So this was the Gazette notice. There we have it, a special Gazette notice published on the 21st. You can see it on your screen there, 21st of October 2022. Now, in this Gazette notice, several provisions of the IEBC Act have been made reference to. And here we have 7A2, which is referred to in the Gazette as being the basis for that notice. And 7A2 of the IEBC Act states that the President shall publish a notice of a vacancy in the Gazette within 7 days of the occurrence of such vacancy. Am I making too much of the impending vacancy bit of things, Elvis?
Yeah, actually, we do not have what is called an impending vacancy. It's either there's a vacancy or there is no vacancy. So, because just as you've read Section 7A2, publishes a notice of a vacancy in the Gazette within 7 days of the occurrence of that vacancy. So this process of gazetting should have happened in January, once the offices actually fell vacant. So again, this brings up to the issue of what exactly is the executive's agenda in this process, because these members of this commission have not yet been declared, their seats, their offices have not yet been declared vacant. You already have an intention, an impending vacancy notice, and under the law, we should also then be expecting in January now a notice of vacancy being issued. It looks a bit confused and can feed into the already existing perception of government agenda in removing and reconstituting the entire IEBC.
All right. James, in your view, was this an attempt to forestall IEBC being, because the vice chairperson acts, correct? Acts for until a chairperson is substantively recruited. So in your view, was this an attempt to forestall Juliana Cherera taking control of the IEBC?
Olive, you know, there's someone who said before that it's not possible even for the devil to know the state of mind of a human being. we can only deduce, we can only glean certain things from certain action or certain things that people say or do. Now, you have a situation in which the president has gazetted what he calls an impending vacancy, which is a phrase not known in law, which is totally alien to the language used by the IEBC Act and the Constitution. And in this particular regard, I want to address the gentleman who currently sits as the Attorney General of the Republic of Kenya. Because ultimately, this is politics, and the politics or the desire of any government is to govern. And in some cases, the desire of government is to govern the way the leadership of that administration would really want. It is not necessarily the case that the desire of government is to govern necessarily all the time in the interest of the people. And you know something that we should understand as Kenyans is the principle upon which the exercise of governmental authority vis-a-vis the enjoyment of rights by the population is simple. That rights by citizens should be interpreted in such a way to give them the maximum enjoyment of those rights, while government should, while rights should be interpreted with respect to government in such a way that government is limited the most in infringing on the rights of citizens. So what am I saying here? I'm saying this, that look, you advertise for an impending vacancy, and then you now realize, without the substantive commissioner being in office and the two other commissioners probably that you're happy about, the logical consequence of that scenario is that the person who takes over the leadership of the commission is the four commissioners that you do not like, especially with a vice chair who is going to act in the position of chair and you don't like her. So then what happens? You ask a minion to bring a petition to Parliament so that that petition is considered by the House that you control, and the House finds that there is ground for a recommendation to the President to form a tribunal to deal with these people. And then you have read the Constitution extremely brilliantly, and you know it provides in A that the President has the opportunity of suspending these commissioners pending the work of the tribunal. So what happens? Effectively, should you suspend those commissioners, then there is absolutely no commission, at least in the formal constitutional sense, that commission is known. And what does that do? It leaves you in the hands of the secretariat, led by a CEO that you like. So effectively you're saying you are overhauling the IEBC, so that eventually you do with it as you please. And I'm posing this simple question as a legal practitioner and constitutional player. So then what happens? If you are capable of doing all this, how are you not capable of bringing to the IEBC a full set of commissioners that you actually like? Okay? Because it looks like there's nothing that is going to prevent you. And so I am saying now, and I will say it even in many years to come, that this administration needs to be very careful how they go about some of these things, because they cut both ways, you know? And we have seen from the previous election that the chairman of the commission of the IEBC, at least with respect to his role in the national presidential election, is a very powerful individual. And you can never tell that if these persons are allowed to behave the way we have seen the others behaving, even one that you have brought yourself can do great damage to you in future. So we should have a scenario in which, what has someone said with respect to constitutional officers and the law? People have said, create a situation, create a legal scenario or legal practice, which if it was handed to your enemy, you would be able to sleep at home. Don't create a situation that is only convenient for you now, because you don't know the political scenarios tomorrow.
Okay. And
so we are saying it is important that Kenyans of goodwill, Kenyans of around the country, say that if this process is being undertaken, let it be undertaken objectively. And should this matter be brought before the courts, we expect that the court should exercise the highest level of independence, decisional independence. And where they find something amiss in the process, they should be able to tell the executive and parliament that this is wrong and cannot stand. That is the only way we can guarantee the sovereignty of the people that is encapsulated in Article 1 of this constitution.
All right. So this is what Wafula Chebukati had to say about that Gazette notice. He said, I wish to welcome the decision to gazette impending vacancies for the positions of IEBC chairperson and 2 commissioners, which will be officially vacant from the 18th of January 2023. This will ensure smooth transition and retention of institutional memory, which has previously not been the case. Because that's the other accusation that was made. Because before the election, around the election, Elvis, the argument was that we left it too late, right, to recruit these 4 commissioners. And therefore, there were some argued part of these disagreements, but because these new commissioners did not have sufficient time to understand how the process works. So there's the argument that it is too late, and now are we saying it is too early to deal with the vacancies that are coming up at the IEBC? Are we having our cake and eating it?
I think what the current chair, Wafula Chebukati, is saying is this need for institutional memory to continue. But there's also a second side to it. If you have these persons, these commissioners leaving office, and you have 4 other commissioners being removed, at the end of the day, that transition isn't there, because the basic idea behind such constitutional offices is that there should at least be someone left who can orient the new persons coming in, and agendas and all that. That's even in good corporate management. But now, if the intention of the government is to ensure continuity with the current state of affairs, and with the likelihood that the 4 commissioners might eventually be removed, then that still gets lost. Maybe we could say that now that we still have a couple more years before the other election, the new team can now familiarize with themselves. At the end of the day, again, I do not think it is in the best public interest for the process to work as it is, because the role of the IEBC is not just conducting general elections. There are many other roles that they do within that these new people will need to immediately step into. So again, those are still concerns that need to be thought about.
All right. And I want to take a break, but quickly let's look at what the IEBC Act provides happen. Yeah. The IEBC Act provides would happen once the office of the chairperson is vacant. This is section 7A4. Whenever a vacancy occurs in the office of the chairperson, the vice chairperson shall act as the chairperson and exercise the powers and responsibility of the chairperson until such a time as the chairperson is appointed. And then I can see here that the provisions of where the position of chairperson and vice chairperson are vacant, a member elected by members of the commission shall act as the chairperson. 6 says the provision of section 6(1) shall not apply to the vice chairperson or a member acting as a chairperson under this section. And absence of chairperson, whenever the chairperson is absent, the vice chairperson shall assume the duties of the chairperson and exercise the powers and responsibility of the chairperson. Now I want us to move and look at in the case of a vacancy, what does the Act provide as to how we go about filling that vacancy? Because when we come back, I want us to look at the proposed amendment to the IEBC Act. Let me see which of these documents. Here it is. And we have the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission Amendment Bill of 2022 that is being considered. And this act, what does it seek to do? One quick moment. I think I skipped a portion here. All right, as it turns out, I did not. But this is what it seeks to do. The first schedule of the IEBC Act 2011 is amended in paragraph 1 by deleting subparagraph 2 and substituting thereof the following subparagraph. The selection panel shall consist of one man and one woman nominated by the Parliamentary Service Commission, one person nominated by the Public Service Commission, one person nominated by the Political Parties Liaison Committee, one person nominated by the Law Society of Kenya, and two persons nominated by the Interreligious Council of Kenya. And this is a bill that has been sponsored by the Leader of the Majority, Kimani Ichung'wah, and he says the principal object of this bill is to amend the first schedule to the IEBC Act of 2011 to change the composition of the selection panel that oversees the filling of vacant positions in the commission. How does it propose to change that composition? We've looked at, we get into that with my panelists on the other side of this break.
Now this is what we call convergence. Come through for the morning fix this and every single Friday right here on NTV. Yes, it's about that time.
You know, the coolest thing about mornings is that a girl and two guys together in the mix, you never know what to expect. You guys are crazy.
From Friday 6, bring your good vibes, bring your picks. From 7 a.m., it's a dope mix. Every single thing on Friday changes with the morning fix.
The county government of Kilifi will mark the Environment and Land Court Conference 10th anniversary from 28th to 2nd December 2022 at Pwani University in Kilifi County. The theme of the event is Looking Back and Moving Forward on Environment and Justice in Kenya. His Excellency William Ruto is expected to officially open the event. Kilifi County Governor Gideon Mongaro welcomes all members of public and stakeholders to actively participate to help curb land issues in the country. You can watch this event and more live on NTV, Tuesday 29th November from 10 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. To register for this event, visit www.judiciary.go.ke.
This week on The Best Of, we look at what it takes to keep avocados constant.
You only learn you have the wrong seedling after 3 years. Then you say, oops, wrong fruit.
Organic farming is the present and the future.
Once they taste your fruit and when it has a certain high percentage of chemicals, then you lose the market.
And we get a proper agroeconomic education.
The difference between me and you, who has bought on the roadside, I am 1 year ahead.
Money grows on trees.
As little as they are, they fetch a lot of money.
On the best of avocado farms.
Crystal Rivers Residences, the future of fine living.
We know your flavor, and that's how you inspire us to always deliver the best quality meals made fresh with locally sourced ingredients. Galitos, bold African flavor.
Get the Galitos Hot Box and a 500 ml Coke soda at just 699 Kenya shillings.
I spy with my little eye an update from Rukia Bule on the work WhatsApp group. She tells us that Kithure Kindiki, that is the Interior Cabinet Secretary, has arrived at the Joseph Kang'ethe Primary School in Kibra. I see earlier she wrote Ezekiel Mashogu, who is the Education Cabinet Secretary, is there as well at the Kang'ethe Primary School in Kibra, and President William Ruto is expected to arrive any time now. There you have it, live pictures. We have Rukia Bule on ground. I believe that is Emmanuel Talam I see there. So every indication the president will be making his way there anytime now. KCP exams as well as KPSEA exams kicked off yesterday. James wished the candidates the very best. Elvis, do you know anybody who's sitting their paper?
No, I don't. But I also just wish all of them all the best.
All right, so we're keeping an eye on the Joseph Kang'ethe Primary School in Kibra. And as soon as the president arrives, we'll be bringing you those pictures live. I can see some pupils running in the background there. So we have Rukia Bule on ground, and we will continue to monitor the situation there. All right, gentlemen, even as I keep one eye on Kibra, we were discussing the selection panel, right, and proposed amendments to those who should constitute the selection panel. There was reference in the Gazette notice of impending vacancy of the first schedule of the IEBC Act. That first schedule states this: at least 6 months before the lapse of the term of the chairperson or members of the commission, or within 14 days of the declaration of a vacancy in the office of the chairperson or members of the commission under the Constitution or this Act, the President shall appoint a selection panel consisting of 7 persons for the purposes of appointment of the chairperson or member of the commission. The selection panel shall consist of 2 men and 2 women nominated by the Parliamentary Service Commission, 1 person nominated by the Law Society of Kenya, 2 persons nominated by the Interreligious Council of Kenya. So what are the proposed amendments? So instead of 2 men and 2 women nominated by the Parliamentary Service Commission, There we go. The proposal is that we have one person nominated by, so we have one man and one woman nominated by the Parliamentary Service Commission, one person nominated by the Public Service Commission, one person nominated by the Political Parties Liaison Committee, one person nominated by the Law Society of Kenya, and two persons nominated by the Religious Council of Kenya. So, James, the Political Parties Liaison Committee is not included in the IEBC Act of 2011. I'm not also seeing the Public Service Commission represented here. I am seeing the Parliamentary Service Commission, Law Society and Inter-Religious Council of Kenya represented. But given the revelations that surrounded the election, especially the presidential election, clearly there were a lot of arguments that Juliana Cherera was chief of staff for Joho, so people were saying county 1 and Juliana Cherera was 0.01. So clearly there's some political influence around the persons who occupy these offices. Is it time that we just be transparent about it?
There will always be, but I'm coming to that in a moment. Equality of arms. You didn't ask me whether I have anyone I know who's sitting.
Oh, I do beg your pardon. Do you know anyone who's sitting their exams?
Yeah. I first want to state that my son, Wayne, is sitting his KCPE exams.
Oh, congratulations.
At Gilgil Hills Academy. I wish him the best. And my nephew is also sitting the KPSCA exams, and I also wish him the best. Now, to come to your point.
So you're the father of a candidate?
I'm the father of a candidate. I am Mbaba. Now, this question of the selection panel has been a thorn in the flesh of the appointment process for commissioners for a long time. In fact, in 2016, heading to 2017, there was a major amendment of election laws. And at that time, the committee, the Parliamentary Select Committee, led by Kiraitu Murungi and James Orengo, both leaders in Senate at the time, led a group of members of parliament from both houses and came up with a very comprehensive set of amendments to the Elections Act, leading to the act that, of course, was used now to conduct the 2017 election. And one of the issues at the time was how do we select, or how do we select the selection panel for IEBC commissioners? So at the time, that committee produced a bipartisan schedule in which 4 persons in that IEBC schedule were to be appointed by religious organizations. It's because there was a lot of distrust amongst the political players at the time, and so on and so forth. But now the problem at the time was that they made that a one-off selection panel, and it was not supposed to do any other selection thereafter. And this created a serious problem because leading to the 2022 election, vacancies happened in the commission, and they would not be filled because there was no selection panel to select the commissioners or to nominate the commissioners to be appointed in the normal manner as anticipated by the law. That's why the Cherera 4 commissioners were appointed very late into the election cycle towards the 2022 election. Parliament later amended the schedule to have the Parliamentary Service Commission produce 4 out of the selection panel. And I think what Kimani Ichung'wah's bill is trying to do is reduce the 4 and give the Parliamentary Service Commission 2 members in the selection panel. Now, if you do a quick analysis of the proposals, you'll see that the proposal is to reduce a lot of influence held currently in the selection panel by the Parliamentary Service Commission and dilute it by bringing in I think, political parties liaison committee.
Yes.
And the Public Service Commission.
Yes.
I cannot tell right now what the mischief for this is, but in my mind I am thinking probably because Parliament is the direct representative of the people elected. There's a possibility that a parliamentary service heavy selection panel would reflect the will of the people more than these other committees, which probably would be highly influenced by the executive. For instance, of course, the Public Service Commission would definitely have a lot of influence from the executive, and I do not know whether the Political Parties Liaison Committee has the independence required of it to be able to participate independently representing political parties. In any event, I wouldn't see the rationale for bringing in the Political Parties Liaison Committee while we have already nominated people from the Parliamentary Service Commission, which represents political parties in the House anyway, or vice versa. So I think this is yet, in my view, again, a convenient attempt to create a selection panel which is easiest.
And I hate, and strictly hapo, a selection panel which is easiest, strictly to hapo, President William Ruto, I'm told, has arrived at the Joseph Kang'ethe Primary School in Kibra. We have our reporter Rukia Bule on location. Already the Interior Cabinet Secretary Kithure Kindiki preceded him, and prior to him, Ezekiel Mashogu, the Education Cabinet Secretary. I believe you can see him there. And this is as the national exam, that is KCPE and KPSEA, proceed across the country nationally. Let's listen in to what message the president has there for the candidates.
Your Excellency, we are starting with a word of prayer from Jenny Njagi. Pastor, where are you?
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, sir. The Cabinet Secretary is present, and all the officers and candidates. Good morning. Now, Psalms 112 verse 2 says, their children will be successful everywhere. An entire generation of the godly people will be blessed. And therefore, our children are blessed this morning. Let us pray. Our Father and our God, we want to thank you, Lord, for your greatness and your goodness in our lives this morning. We want to worship you for who you are. You have given us the gift of life, and you have gathered us this morning here, Lord, as we start the second day of the examination. We want to thank you, Lord, for bringing our dear president to this school this morning, together with the entourage that have come to wish the candidates well and also to oversee the opening of the same. And therefore, we want to declare that he's blessed together with the team that he has come with. Thank you for our children this morning. As your word says, that our children will be great, they will eat the good of the land. And we also want to declare a blessing upon them this morning. Even as they start the second day of the examination, we pray for calmness and peace in their hearts, and we want to declare that they are successful this morning. Be with them from the beginning to the very end, and even as they do the last paper tomorrow, we pray that all shall be well. We thank you and honor you because you are a gracious God, because we are prayed through Christ our Lord. Thank you, sir.
Your Excellency, the President of the Republic of Kenya and the Commander-in-Chief, we thank you so much for finding time to be here this morning. Your Excellency, this is the second day that we are undertaking these exams, and in your country, Your Excellency, we have 36,000 centers where these exams are being done, and we want to give an assurance, Your Excellency, sir, that since we started the exercise yesterday, all is going on well, very smoothly. We have not had any kind of hitch since yesterday that we started the exam, Your Excellency. The number of candidates countrywide are 3,416 and 48, 3,416 and 48 countrywide. And Your Excellency, yesterday they did English language and mathematics. Today they are doing Swahili and science. And then tomorrow will be the final day, Your Excellency. Your Excellency, these young ones have got a source of great inspiration from you, because when they look at your background and your history, Your Excellency, the way you started it was in an ordinary school like this one, and with God and the kind of discipline, you have been able to make it all the way. So they look at you as a great inspiration. And in a few years to come, these are the people that are going to serve our country in various other capacities, Your Excellency. Your Excellency, we have the principal of the school, Mr. Nyaga. Just raise your hand. My colleague, my counterpart is here, Your Excellency, your Minister, Internal Security, and the other senior officials, the Chairman of Teacher Service Commission, Private Secretary, all of them are here. And Your Excellency, in the whole country, we have personnel, we have everything that is required, and all is going to go on well. And until that time that we end the exams on 23rd of December, all arrangements are in place, Your Excellency. With this, Your Excellency, now, sir, it is now my present duty to invite you to talk to your children, Your Excellency. Welcome, Your Excellency.
Asante sana Waziri. Joseph Kang'ethe, hamjambo? Good morning.
Good morning, our President.
And how are you?
Fine, thank you, our President. And how are you?
I am good. Kwanza mimi nataka niwashukuru sana kwa kunikaribisha hapa Joseph Kang'ethe asubuhi ya leo. Asante sana kwa walimu na nyinyi wanafunzi kwa kutukaribisha hapa, na tumekuja hapa kwenye siku ya muhimu sana kwenu. Mmekuwa darasani miaka 8 na kidogo imebaki, si ndio? Na leo ndio siku ya mtihani. Na nimekuja hapa kuhakikishia nyinyi na wale wanafunzi wote wa taifa letu la Kenya, zaidi ya milioni 3 ambao wanafanya mtihani katika centers zetu zote katika Kenya, kwamba serikali ya Kenya imepanga mambo ya mitihani yenu ya watoto wa standard 8 na pia watoto wa form 4, KCPE na KCSE zote pamoja zitaandaliwa kati ya tarehe 21 mpaka tarehe mwezi wa 11 mpaka tarehe 23 mwezi wa Disemba. Kazi hiyo yote imepangwa vizuri. Tumekubaliana ya kwamba containers ambazo ziko na mitihani yale ya KCPE itafunguliwa saa 12 asubuhi, yale ya KCSE yatafunguliwa saa 1 asubuhi, na exams zote zitaanza pale saa 2, na tuko na wasimamizi wa kutosha ambao wamehitimu tayari, wamefanyiwa vetting ama wamechunguzwa. Kila mwalimu ambaye atakuwa msimamizi katika kila examination center, kutakuwa na askari wa kutosha kuhakikisha kwamba kuna usalama kwa watoto wetu wote, ili waweze kutekeleza wajibu wao na kufanya mtihani, ili tuweze kuwapanga katika nafasi ambayo inafuata ya elimu yenu. Wizara ambayo inahusikana na mambo haya ya elimu, tumekubaliana na wao ya kwamba kila mwanafunzi bila ya kusumbuliwa, bila ya mambo ya vurugu katika sehemu zote za Kenya. Kila mwanafunzi apatiwe nafasi ya kufanya mtihani katika mazingira tulivu na mazingira yenye iko na amani. Na ndio sababu tumemobilize askari wengi kuhakikisha kwamba mambo ya mitihani inaendelea vizuri katika centers zetu zote. And I want to say for the record that this examination, we are going to be having examinations in all the centers for our 3 million plus students across the Republic of Kenya. This is a very important moment for us as a nation. It is a very important moment for millions of parents, guardians, your friends, your relatives, and we want to ensure that this exam is administered in the best way possible. All administrators, every head teacher and center in charge have been given adequate security to make sure that all our children who are carrying out exams today, either KCP or KCSE, there is adequate security in every center so that we do not distract our children from carrying out their examination. I am confident that all arrangements have been put in place between all the stakeholders and the multi-agency team that has put this together. I want every official who has been vetted to participate in this exercise to make sure that they discharge their responsibilities in accordance with the training and the agreement that has been done between the multi-agency team and all those who will be administering these exams, to make sure that there are no incidences, that there is no disruption, that there is no distraction, and all our students have an opportunity to have their examination in a tranquil environment. Shortly, we will be agreeing on how to transit into the next level. A decision is going to be made in the very short term so that you can know next year, especially for those who are in grade 6 and grade 7, how they will move and transit to the next level. I want to thank you very much for welcoming us to Joseph Kangede Primary School. I look forward to coming back here again, and I wish every student in Standard 8 and in Form 4 in the Republic of Kenya my very best wishes as you do your examinations, and I am sure all of you are going to come out with flying colors. Congrats. Oh. So, asanteni sana. May the good Lord bless you, and I wish all of you well. Sawa sawa. Asanteni sana. God bless you.
You now go to your respective classrooms. Immediately, Kipusea and the KCPE, please go to your respective classrooms. Your Excellency, thank you very much for gracing this occasion. You can now go back to your classrooms in 2 minutes, slowly. Yes, Marimu. Back to your classrooms.
Yeah. Boys and girls, God is good, and all the time. Now we are so blessed, sindio? Na sasa mtihani mtafanya vizuri. We have our president. Amewabariki. Sasa ingine ni kufanya mtihani vizuri. Are we happy? Ebu, can you give a very good clap? So from here now, we are going to our classes in this order. KCP students, since you are the ones behind, mutangulie, sawa? We go to our classes now. First, KCP students, all wako nyuma. Yeah. Aya, KCP tuharakishe.
All right, the president making it very clear there to those planning demonstrations over the Cherera 4 that those sitting exams deserve to do so under tranquil conditions. I cut you short, James, just before we went to the Joseph Kangede Primary School in Kibra, where President William Ruto flagged off, kicked off, spoke. I think I should put it that way, spoke to the pupils before they start for the exams on day 2. Just looking at some of the tweets that have been generated from this conversation, Flavian Molama says the president has a very minimal role in the removal of the 4 commissioners, only forming the tribunal in the event that it is recommended by Parliament. And the president, just like any other Kenyan, has a right to express his views. He says the president, in calling those commissioners rogue, has a right to express his views. We have Abdi Kafar, who says, what are they demonstrating for since the president took over? It's just 2 months old. Let them take time around media and see what they will do. People are tired. They need food on their table. Let's let the opposition excuse us. And then here we have Jesus Christ 10, Jesus, who says the commissioners should be given expulsion, period. The spelling of expulsion. Vicky Nganga says facts are facts. Looking at the array of the complaints and lawyers, it is very clear who the bosses of the Cherera opaque 4 were. And I think I will leave the tweets there, but I will allow you to finish because we need to wind up now. I see Winnie Lubembe has walked into studio already, but I'll give you 2 minutes each. Just conclude your thoughts on the proposed changes to the selection panel. Is it a way to give the executive greater say on who sits at the IEBC? James?
In my view, what I was saying is, of course, every administration would really love to have an easy selection panel to work with because it is a matter of life and death sometimes who sits in the position of chairman of the IEBC or chairperson of the IEBC and commissioners of the IEBC and so on and so forth. Personally, am I really worried about those changes? I am not. We have had experiences in our political history in which certain quarters thought that one person or the other was on their side with respect to elections, and it didn't turn out that way. So let them select or let them put in place whatever panel they think is good for the selection of IEBC commissioners. I think over time, how the political games and intrigues play out is what will determine really how these commissioners are going to do their work. But I would really wish we got to a point where any person interested in contesting for election, either as president or in whichever other position, didn't have to look at who is actually sitting as chairperson of the commission or member of the commission of the IEBC. Okay. That's where ideally we should get. But I think with the experience we have in this country, that looks like a dream in the distant future.
Elvis?
Just for me, in conclusion, really, I think the government, the state needs to play a more active role in dispelling the perception that the executive wants to control who ends up being or sitting in the commission, the IEBC, because just as my colleague has said, at the end of the day, it should not be about who is the chair or the commission of the IEBC. It should be about systems and processes that will ensure that elections are conducted free and fair. About the proposed changes, I don't think they have much of an effect because at the end of the day, if there is to be executive control, it still is there even now with the current setup, with 4 members still being proposed by the Parliamentary Service Commission. So okay. At the end of the day, we should focus more on strengthening the institutional democracy as opposed to looking at it from the point of view of who is actually sitting in those seats.
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. Elvis Abenga, James Mamboleo, advocate. I was remiss in not reading this tweet as we close. Wakili Mamboleo, this is Barasite Arab Simu, who says, Wakili Mamboleo is not being very sincere. IEBC commissioners have been removed twice by Raila Odinga, 2008 Kivuitu team and 2013 Isaac Hassan team. Kwani it's only right when it's Raila complaining and not any other person. He says the Cherera 4 must go immediately. Exclamation mark. All right, we wind up AM Live.
I'm happy that he's listening to us.
All right, I'm going to conclude AM Live at that point. When Lubembe coming with your world. I've been your host, Olive Burrows.